It's okay, it's good for Jeff. Keep him going.
Wait for it.
Mike, you been waiting on me?
I have.
Yeah, I thought you had that feeling. I'm trying to turn this off right now.
What constitutes a quorum by the bylaws?
I'm gonna call you back. Bye.
That clock is a little bit behind.
No, it's 5:30. Oh,
Do we want to give Don 2 or 3 more minutes?
Give Don a minute or two. There's only so much we can do without Don. His status update. We are not starting the meeting, so we're not going to talk into the microphone until we are.
Did a custody trial with Keener, Judge Keener last week. He's really brilliant. Really kind of, well, you want to say, where did they get him? Where did, and it was a,
Aaron?
a real master in which we bifurcated and did the custody first.
Hi.
Sorry, I was asking the other day. I was leaving just as you were coming
Thank you.
in. Oh, yeah, I remember seeing you. I was like, I know that face. I know your face.
You don't trust it?
I don't
Okay,
trust
got
it.
it.
I don't-
Okay.
After 5:30,
It was a
suspect
wonderful
everything
divorce.
is ready. It's ready. All of them are.
It's a wonderful divorce, but he's,
Okay, whereabouts?
he's so clear about where you are in the case.
Okay.
Is it the city line?
Yep, right on the city line. Okay.
I'm kind of right on the city line too.
Yeah, Ridgewood is back there.
Well,
What do you want to do?
and the 100 block, the east side of the 100 block is in DeWitt.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I thought DeWitt didn't start till Thompson Road.
no,
No kidding, I didn't know
it's
that.
weird. And then it goes up and
Good sense of humor?
in not all of the 100 block, but about 2/3 of the 100 block, and then part of Clover Ridge, Burns, and Boston.
Or trash people trying to figure out what they're supposed to get and not get. It's got to be so confusing.
It's kind of interesting because I think they pick them up anyways.
Might as well while we're here, right?
Yeah.
Samia? I think when Samia sits down, we'll start.
Hi, how are you?
All right, welcome. We will call this meeting to order at maybe 5:34. I'm Bryn Lovejoy-Grinnell. I'm the chair, and I'll just have everyone on the board kind of go around. I believe that our vice chair, Don Johnson, is bringing name tags and also an orientation packet for Peggy, so, and also copies of the agenda. So hopefully there'll be copies of the agenda for folks soon enough. But I'll start with Mike. Would you just introduce yourself and say whether you're a mayoral, district, or at-large appointee?
Michael Kerwin, and I'm unsure. I've seen the sheet, but I didn't memorize it.
Okay,
Says at large.
there you go. Josh is going to be your support person.
At large, thank you. Okay, I'm going to write it down. I actually purchased a notebook for these meetings, so now I'll know. Thank you.
Excuse me. Elise Baker, and I'm on the fourth district.
I didn't mean this as a pop quiz.
You made me
Bryn,
feel so much better.
Yeah, because you threw me off.
Bryn, and I'm an at-large appointee.
Joshua Carroll, 3rd District appointee.
Yeah, Harry Pratt, 2nd District. Samia Alfara, Mayor appointee.
Peggy Chase, mayoral appointee.
Ada Hernandez, at large.
Awesome, thank you. And thank you and welcome especially to Peggy. It's your first meeting. Thank you for joining us. You make a full board. We now have actually 11 people appointed to the board, which is very exciting, which means we are full. So thank you. I'm going to skip around a little bit because Don has some of these updates, but one issue that I looked into following our last meeting was with respect to investigations and hearings. So our, when we vote a case to hearing, we cannot do that as a board until we have a recommendation from the administrator. The recommendation is not binding on us, it's just the first step before we can make a decision by the board, yes, we're voting up, or no, we're voting no. And the attorneys for the police, hi Don, have let us know that they will not accept the legitimacy of a vote to a hearing if we don't have that administrator up or down recommendation first. So I did talk to Corp Counsel, our legal counsel, and they advised me that we can appoint someone, one of us, to be the temporary administrator, to be like an interim administrator, not paid, not to do any other thing but for that recommendation. We could even rotate it. You know, Ada can be it for 1 month and Peggy can be it for another month. We just need one of us to be wearing that hat, and so that person is saying, as the administrator, I recommend or I don't recommend a vote. So we don't actually have any cases, unless I'm about to be surprised. I don't think we have any cases for consideration this month, so I don't think we have to appoint someone this month. And if people have questions or want to discuss what that would look like or any concerns or questions about that, thank you. We can absolutely do that. I don't think it's critical for this month. But does anyone have any questions about that?
I don't have any questions, but I have something to say. We are in the interview processing of someone for the admin, so we will have, I guess somebody will give the update on that, so we can kind of see how that goes, because we may not need to appoint anyone for it because we don't have no cases up to that point, but we are in the interview process. So when you get to that point on the agenda, we can address it a little bit more.
Great. Yeah, I am really hoping that by April, our April board meeting, we do have cases that we've been able to review ahead of time and we are able to vote to a hearing. And I don't know how realistic it is to expect that someone's going to be able to start and be ready to go to recommend cases in the administrator role by April. So I think it's reasonable to think that we are going to have to appoint someone temporarily, you know, for the purpose of just that, even just 1 or 2 meetings, because I don't want to hold up the complaints and hold up the hearings any more than we absolutely have to.
As Don is working in the office anyways, does it make sense for us to appoint him? Do we need to vote, or what's the procedure?
I think we could, yeah, I think we should vote to appoint somebody. What first of all, we can vote, we can do whatever. If you want to make a motion that you want to definitely appoint somebody, we could have that as a motion and then separately vote on who that should be, either on a 1 meeting basis or until we have an administrator ready to pick that up kind of basis.
I think it should be discussed a little bit more in the executive session, so we can all be on the same page and try to, instead of trying to put a rush on the table out here, we need to talk about it a little bit more in the executive quarters, I think. That's my opinion.
Okay, I don't think we can talk about I don't think it's appropriate to talk about the issues around appointing it in executive session, but because I think the 2 things that we're allowed to talk about in executive session are just hiring, firing, HR kinds of issues, and specific hearings.
No, that's not my understanding. I've talked to various parts of the council and different people. What is supposed to be suggested in the executive hearing, in the executive office, in session, is things that we have to talk deeply on and matters and concerns, and that would be considered one of those matters, correct?
Yes, I
Right,
think
and-
you and I have a different understanding, but
Okay.
we can, but if, I'm not going to stop you from talking about, I just may not feel comfortable staying in executive session if there are conversations that I don't feel comfortable with, but that's okay. Yeah. Is there anyone who wants to add any comments or questions or concerns about that issue now before we move on? I don't see a reason to vote today because I don't think it's urgent. I don't think we have any cases, so I'm happy moving forward without a vote on that issue today. Don, do you want to start with, the minutes, excuse me. So, did everyone get a copy of the minutes that I drafted from the February 6th meeting? They were in your email, they were not
By
passed
email,
out today.
not here, but by
Yes,
email.
not here. Does anyone have any changes or corrections to be made on the minutes? If not, they got them all through email, yeah.
Okay, and I printed them all out, so anyone can have a copy too. Anyone in the audience want a copy of this? Oh, no.
So whatever agendas should go back there, and
Okay.
if you want to put leftover meeting minutes, they're only draft minutes, so they probably should not be distributed yet,
No,
because they
these are
haven't been
just the
approved.
agenda.
Okay. Does anyone have any corrections or changes to the minutes? Okay, hearing none, I move to adopt the minutes from the February 6th meeting.
I vote to adopt.
Thank you, that's a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, that passes.
Minutes.
Yes. Okay. So Don, are you prepared to give some status updates?
Yes.
Okay. It works? Yes.
Okay. As everyone knows, that my position as a temporary, I'm as a clerk type 2 in the office, just public facing, answering calls and sending out information if a customer requests that. So we have had 7 clients that have called in requesting information about filing a complaint against the Syracuse City Police Department. Those forms have been sent out to those individuals, and one individual is going to do it online, so we're just waiting for that information to come back to us. I did go through and looked at all the invoices. Those all pending invoices that I found have now been paid and taken care of. I'm in the process of, I met with the budget director today to discuss our budget, since it's coming up March 18th, I think is the deadline for submitting information for the budget.
Say that date again.
March 18th.
18.
Yep. And it looks like they have done an increase in all the areas of the budget. We still have a large sum of money sitting from the salaries that haven't been paid since September. So we do have money in the budget right now, and that's July 1st, I think, when the new budget takes place. So, and that's all about I have to report.
Do you have any update? 7 complaints have come in what time period? Since when?
That's January, I think I took position January 29th.
Okay, so that's from January 29th to like
today.
yesterday, today, okay.
Yep.
And do we have any information about complaints that came in prior to January 29th? Like, are those out in the ether someplace? Like, where might those be?
Those should be on the shared drive.
Okay.
Well, they would have been on the shared drive before Renette left the office, and the office was closed down. Nothing would have been recorded after she left the office, because there was no one there to take the complaints.
I thought we had an online form that people could fill out and it would go to an email.
Right, and there's nothing that has come through on the email.
Okay, so just none were received.
Right.
People could have
Could
found our
filed it.
form, could have found our online,
Yeah.
but we didn't receive any.
Right, that is correct.
Okay, so that's from like September to end of January.
And I just got access to Renette's email 2 days ago, so, so I've been going through there, so, and reviewing all the information that's come in, so.
What should folks be doing if they need access to their email, the shared drive? I know
Okay.
there's still some questions.
So, any board member does an
go back?
Oh, sorry,
item-
I didn't ask.
I just have a question. Last week when we were here, or last month when we were here, you were talking about the bills, and there was bills submitted by an investigator.
Right.
Are those some of the bills that were paid?
Those are all the bills that are paid. Anything that was pending, that was past due or current, has all been taken care of now.
Okay. And I thought that was the case. My question is, what was the investigator investigating?
Long before.
Long
Was there-
before.
oh,
So,
long before?
Yeah,
Okay.
nothing current that had been investigated, so.
Thanks.
I mean, that's theoretically, I mean, you bring up a good point. That's another thing that some one of us, or we could say Don could do it, or we could say it's the temporary interim administrator, someone could be deciding what to do with the complaints that are coming in, should they go to the investigator or not, rather than waiting for a paid person. And that's a system that we could decide to come up with together.
Well, the only caveat to that is that if we don't have the temporary administrator in place, the ops department is just going to forward the complaints back down to us, so it won't go anywhere. So we need to definitely get that temporary administrator in place.
Oh, wait, I didn't understand that. So what about,
So if we send a case up to ops, let's say we get the way the process comes in, client fills out a complaint form. We then get the complaint form. We forward that up to the ops. The ops then starts a review on the complaint. Right now, what's happening is that, from what I've understood, is that if we send a complaint up to the ops department, they're going to send it back and say, you don't have an administrator, so we don't have to look at this case.
Could you clarify what you mean when you say ops department?
That's the police operations. So when we file when we send a claim up there, what they do, they extract all the information when the officer was sent out, whether there was a 911 call, who was the officers on duty, and then all the information about the case. So then they forward that information down, and then we add that to the client's file.
so really, we have to get that information before we can even decide whether to have our investigator investigate it.
That is correct.
So we do need an administrator
We do need
for
a-
more than just that later stage.
Right.
We need, the ops that wants to deal with someone who we are calling the administrator.
Right, that is correct.
Okay.
Two additional questions, back to, but one of them goes to you. The first one is the investigator paid an hourly rate? And they submit a bill that itemizes that hour?
So historically, that's what we have had in place. We've had this investigator, Virgil, who is paid hourly, and that's what we've had approved on our budget for the last several years.
Okay.
This year, a year and a half ago or so, and Harry, you'll correct me if I'm wrong with the history stuff, we asked for a budget line for a half-time or maybe even a full-time investigator.
Right.
And that process of hiring was stalled and we waited for almost a year, I think, for the county to approve the posting, et cetera, et cetera. In the meantime, we were just paying hourly. And I think we were at a stage where we could finally hire someone for that, and then our last administrator left. So we could be hiring a part-time or full-time person at a salaried rate. Right now, all we have in place is this hourly person.
My second question goes to at the start of the meeting, you talked in terms of a temporary administrator, maybe everyone taking a shot at it for a moment.
Yeah.
Will the ops people recognize a temporary administrator if that temporary administrator asks the police department for all these records?
Given that the Corp Council has told us that we can and we have the authority to do that, and
Yeah.
they're also theoretically in charge of the police department, I'm hoping that they recognize if we say this is,
Okay.
you know,
All right, I
whatever.
just want to be sure. Thanks.
I'm not sure, I'm not
Yeah,
saying
no,
I'm sure, but I
no,
hope,
your
I'm
answer,
hopeful.
your answer at least gets me in the door.
Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
so then does that make it more urgent that we have to appoint someone at this
Some more
meeting?
urgent, Yep.
Okay. Okay. And we don't have 7 in now, but 7 people have contacted.
7 people has contacted us. So
We
we
don't
don't have actual 7 cases that are
Okay.
pending out there.
Have any forms come in out of those 7 calls?
No.
Okay. I hear Elise saying that she wants more discussion on this, and so before we vote, I think if there are more questions about it, we can certainly wait. I would want to vote definitely by the next, at the next meeting, so that we have someone ready to go at that point. If people feel like we are ready, you have enough information, I'm happy to entertain a motion to appoint a temporary administrator.
I think that our infrastructure, we have to develop a stable infrastructure with all of us in it. And we all come up with the ideas or whatever it is, and everybody can voice their opinion, and that should be done within our group. And then we bring it back to the public. So that's my concern. We need to iron out a lot of things that we need to iron out, especially on the temp administrator and how it's going to work and all the things that it's going to do. Because if we rush into some, we're going to end up in a position that is not going to be feasible, or either it's not going to work unless we work it out first. Because if we rush into it, I don't think it's going to work. I think we need to talk it out, and everybody input should be inside of it to make it more workable for the community as well as us on the board. So that's my opinion.
And right now, because we had discussed that the concept of having everyone do a rotation round robin on the temporary position. The only caveat to that is that then that means that everybody has to be brought up to speed on the total process of how the whole claims process goes through there. It took me, March? I started in January, and I'm just now getting access to all the things that I need to get access in order to proceed with doing the claims. So that's something that we need to think about when we're looking at a temporary. Because I don't think the rotation is going to work for us. Because, and then to piggyback on the question that you had asked, I need to know how many of you are able to get into the shared drive, how many of you have your Syracuse.gov email address, because what I'll have to do is I'll have to get with IT and get you guys set up, and with Ada, and I think with Josh, I think with Mike, I think it was that you had sent in, said that you didn't have your
No.
token.
I did not, no.
Oh,
I haven't,
Emailed you the-
okay, so then it was you and Ada that I put in the request for the tokens, so you guys should be getting your tokens pretty soon.
Are they mailing them to us, or what is that?
Not
process?
sure exactly what that process was. I know I had to come over here to City Hall to pick up mine, so I'll find out from IT, and then I'll email you guys and let you know what the
it's like
process is.
cryptocurrency, it's just floating, right?
Really slow.
Well, I just want to say, as some of you know, I don't get off work till 6 o'clock, so I'm always running in here, and I left a little early. So I'm sorry that I'm late and missed the conversation on the interim administrator.
That's what this conversation was about.
Right.
Internal.
Uh-huh. And so did you guys talk about our applicant?
Not yet.
No, so we haven't done committee reports yet,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
But we can, the committee reports is next up. And I know we have 10 minutes before we have our presenter here, so I will just say, I would like us to consider, and I'm happy to table it to another meeting, but I think an issue that we're going to have to discuss is not only for Barry, who's here to give a training tonight, but when we are developing training for the administrator, for the other paid staff, those folks are going to need to get trained. And I know that not many of us are prepared to be doing hands-on, full-time training to an administrator. And I also don't think it's fair to say, here's the keys to the office, good luck with everything. And so I think one of our jobs is going to be figuring out a training schedule for what we want the administrator to be doing, and how, if we are not providing that, and if the city is not providing all of it, how we are going to recruit outside people to give whatever training we need. And I think part of that is going to have to be including paying for training for those people, whether that's webinars and conferences, or in-person training for that person, and maybe that person and the other paid positions that we're looking to hire.
What presenter are you talking about? You said getting 10 minutes for the presenter, because our inside stuff needs to be straightened out. What presenter? Are you talking about the?
So Barry is at 6 o'clock giving a training on the history of the CRB. And that's a 30-minute training, and then Linda suggested going into an executive session. So that's what we're doing at 6:30.
I don't agree with us having a training more so than we having to fix our infrastructure. The training stuff that we have that Barry possibly help us with is stuff that comes from the book that we can all learn and live. But we did not agree on the training session. You came up with that, and you're presenting it to us tonight. And I don't think it's fair to us as board members. Anybody else who's aware or said that we need this training to come from on the outside, because I'm not happy with that. And I say I'm not happy because we should have all been included in the decision-making process. And we got a lot of stuff that we need to straighten out inside to make it workable before we have somebody else come inside and give us that. What's more important would be for them to give you the information based on the people that have been looked at for interviews, things that are happening inside of the office that will make us more constructive and together as a team of people to work. Because to me, that's secondary. The history of it is secondary. What's most important is getting the infrastructure straightened out so that it can work properly, not so much as in having someone come and train, especially when we didn't. And is it not my understanding that this is a voting situation or circumstances? We should all vote on it or have some word to say? What is it that she can give us in this?
My role as chair is to create an agenda. About 2 weeks ago, I sent out an email saying that what I understood was that there were 2 immediate training needs. One was, what is our role on the CRB? What's the role of the board members? What are we supposed to be doing? Why are we here? How was this created, and why? I asked Barry to do a training on that because she was involved in creating the initial legislation. So she's doing a 30-minute training for us on that to kickstart our training. And then there was also some confusion, which continues tonight, about what is required by open meetings law. So I set up a training for our next meeting. And about 2 weeks ago, I sent an email to everyone on the board. Sorry, not you, Peggy. I don't think you were in it yet.
No,
but,
I think I got it.
Oh, I did get it? Okay. Saying these are the trainings, the 30-minute trainings are going to be part of our regular meetings. And then we're going to go right into an executive session. So I understand your concern, happy to talk to you about it more, but I'm going to need to take it offline because I want to respect Barry's time, I want to respect the other
Barry
members.
shouldn't have a time right now because none of us are aware of us doing anything in regards to this. You keep saying that you made a choice. The chairperson is to set up and make sure everything's, but you still have to have the part of the board to make decisions in regards to that. Is that not true?
No, it's not true. So the bylaws say that the chair makes an agenda.
That's not what I read.
Oh, okay. Well, we can talk about that offline. But again, I want to get to committee reports. I think it's really important that we get to committee reports, and I'm happy to talk to you more about this. We can also talk about this more at 6:30 if you want to delay the executive session. That's fine with me. But I'm prepared to go.
You sent us an email said that we were not going to have, you suggest that we don't have executive, but you still had that in place.
Because Linda corrected me. I said I'm not aware of anything that we need to discuss in executive. Linda said, oh, here's something we have to discuss, so we're having an executive. That's how it works. That's why I sent the agenda.
We got a lot of stuff to discuss in executive, things like building and reconstructing a board, because two of the things that got me this adamant, you said in the last meeting that we had that we don't know anything, and we do know some things. We're just not given the opportunity to put in what we know to reconstruct a board that is workable for us to make it work. And the other one is you did an interview, and in that interview you said we don't know anything, and there's so many competent people here that can help build a strong board to make it a better board, not with just a decision made by you because you're the chair. The chair has to speak to the rest of us in order for us to know what's going on. You can't speak if we don't know what's going on. You sent us an email after you had made the decision. Is that not true?
The decision that we needed training?
We have a
Yes,
training
that's
committee,
correct.
and we met, some of us worked and tried to get in stuff that we can do in training. How is it we can't do it, but we can get someone else to do it? And no reflection on you, Barry, it's just things that seem like it should be done the right way. And this is what happened with the last board. The board made decisions, and they took a control thing, and then everybody wasn't aware until it went out into the public, and like, we made this decision. We need to tell each other what, like he said, what the OPS stands for. Some of us may not have known that. Those are the things that are crucial to us learning and understanding what our position is on this board. We need to know what the job of the chairperson is, what administration does. These are things that need to be put into us, and we should build strongly on, know what if a temporary administration would do. What is it? We have to build that stuff, because if we don't build it, it's not going to come out right, and the board is going to fall down. It's not going to have no status to it. It's not going to have anything to it that's going to make it concrete. It's every decision is going to be made by the chair, administration, and we just sit back and be a yes man, and that's not the way it's supposed to be. And I'm not trying to disrespect anything. I'm just trying to say that we all should have a part in it, and we should build, because we have the credentials here to build what's needed for this board.
Well, this afternoon, I stopped over at City Hall, and I was advised that anytime that a meeting is going to be, a trainer is going to be, or a spokesman is going to be at one of the sessions, is that the entire board needs to vote whether or not they want that individual to do the training or not. And it always has to be prior to the day of the event. So
That's just facts, what I'm saying.
I disagree.
Oh.
I disagree respectfully, and I don't think that there is anyone else who could give a training about what the purpose or the meaning of the CRB is, what the enacting legislation's goals were, better than Barry could.
absolutely, no, we're not.
And what I am proposing is, you have proposed a retreat for board training, fantastic. You have proposed, Elise, that the board training and development committee develop a whole course of training. That's fantastic. I am also aware that we have case complaints that need to be brought to a hearing. We have folks who need to be hired, who need to be trained. These are immediate things, and I am concerned that if we wait until we are all 100% comfortable with every single step of the CRB, we will be looking at 2026, 2027, when we are ready to proceed and do our work here. And there's going, in my opinion, that we need to move on some of these issues. I don't think this should be controversial to get a training about what the CRB is for 30 minutes. If you don't think it's necessary because you know enough about it, you're welcome to sit out. There's no one who's forcing your attendance here. But again, because the open meetings has come up already at the last two meetings, I asked our attorney to give us a training on what open meetings law is and what it requires from us as a public board. That's scheduled to happen next month for, again, 20 to 30 minutes in this same time slot. If that seems totally wildly unnecessary to you, I respectfully disagree, because we apparently have a disagreement, and we need some clarification from our lawyers, in my opinion.
I'd like to move to the training, if you don't mind. I'd like to, we've batted this all around as much as possible. The training is important, that's number one. Number two, that agenda or those proposals went out about 2 weeks ago, but certainly more than a week ago. Everyone on this panel had an opportunity to reach out to you, not spread it all over the entire board, to say they disagreed, they don't like it, they have a different suggestion. I don't know if you received anything other than receiving it from this member here. So my proposal tonight is move ahead with the training. She's here to present. If we want to discuss this further in the executive session, but the only thing we're doing now is doing the bureaucratic dance.
Right.
That's all we're doing. And I'd like to respectfully say, let's move to the training. This person was invited here to talk to us. Let's hear it.
So those who
Ma'am,
agree.
I don't want to debate it. So if you want to continue debating, then I think that we should go into executive session and hammer this out, okay? But we're going to do that after the training, okay? She's here to train. I think it's rude to invite someone, ask them to train us, and then have this debate in front of them. This is a debate that I believe would happen in an executive session. I'd like to hear the training. I don't want to debate it anymore.
We should have been in executive session before this even took place.
We
Is that not
didn't.
agree?
That's
We
why,
didn't.
that's my argument. We
And
didn't.
that's what my argument
You
is.
still want to argue. That's my point.
I'm not arguing, I'm
Okay.
just telling you
I'd like to hear
that
the
it
training.
should have been
I
in
can't make it any
executive before it
clearer.
came to
I'd
this
like to
table.
hear the training. This is just
You know
circular
what,
argument.
To bring the temperature down, what we need to do is take a vote right now on who wants to hear the training and who doesn't want to hear the training.
Perfect.
At least we're back into the area where we need to be, where everyone needed to have voted on whether or not we wanted the training or not. So you can put a motion out, Mike, that
I'm making a motion right now that we continue and have the training from Barry. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
So just given that vote, I recognize we haven't heard committee reports yet, so I would move to hear the committee reports following the training and before we go, no thanks, Barry, I appreciate it. We've just had a motion to go ahead with your training and we'll get the committee reports later. So please go ahead and I will cut you off at about 6:35 so we can then finish the rest of our agenda and then go into an executive session.
Do the best I can.
Thank you.
You all were sent a series of newspaper articles I brought and pressed for those of you that may actually want to look. And then I also have a series of supplemental documents that you don't have that I'd like to pass around. Thank you very much for the opportunity to tell you about the history.
You can get confused about it.
And by the way, OPS stands for Office of Professional Standards, also known as OOPS.
Thank you.
Or OPS.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, what did you just say, Barry? You're off the mic.
Sorry.
Ops? You said something about ops?
OPS is Office of Professional Standards.
Thank you.
Used to be called Internal Affairs. Okay, so I've been asked to talk about how the CRB got started and about its evolution, development, its history. Bit of a caveat, on the website of the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement, or NACOL, there are 144 civilian police review entities listed. There are probably more like 200. Civilian review of police started around 1948, 1958. There's actually a precursor in the 20s, believe it or not, and I can talk about that separately. But the real growth in CRBs was from the 1970s to the 1990s, including our CRB here. I'll also say I was not involved in the writing of the original CRB legislation. I was instrumental in getting the law rewritten and revised in 2011. I don't want to claim something I didn't do. So one thing I want to say is civilian review of police is just one part of ensuring police accountability. External review must be combined with a number of different mechanisms to have true accountability. In your packets, the first document, both sides, one is about the different methods of accountability for police, which includes, but is not limited to CRB. The flip side shows that there are several models of CRB. What makes ours in a particular category is that we do we accept complaints directly, we investigate complaints, conduct hearings, and make recommendations about officer discipline, policy, procedure, and training. This is not the only model. This is the model here. Most CRBs were created in the aftermath of a community tragedy where somebody was killed or seriously injured in an encounter with police. That's just usually the way the call comes to form them. Syracuse is no different. And I always say it's important to say the names. There was a series of incidents in the 70s and 80s that led to a public push for police accountability. In 1970, an SPD officer shot and killed an 18-year-old named Jeremiah Mitchell. He was African American. The officer was cleared of criminal and civil wrongdoing. There was an uproar. In the late 70s, police arrested a man named Douglas Lodge, a young black man who was on the edges of a gay pride march. Community members at the march followed him to the jail, objecting to his arrest, and Charles Anderson went in and got him out. Charles is an elder statesman in this area and was a city councilor and was the sponsor of the CRB enabling legislation. I'll point out that this part of the impetus to call for the formation of a CRB and the involvement of people from the LGBTQ community is often obscured when people tell the history of the CRB. I wanted it included. In 1979, SPD officers beat severely a 19-year-old photojournalist named Dennis Collins, who was also African American. He was beaten so severely that he was hospitalized for 6 days. And that's usually the precipitating incident that is said to lead to the formation of this CRB. He had the support of family and church who took up his cause, especially when he refused to plead guilty. And that's when the first rally in Syracuse against police violence was held. 2 months later, an organization was formed, in part by his mother, called Citizens United Against Police Brutality. And that organization started to build partnerships with a series of civil rights and diverse organizations. In 1980, 4 SPD officers beat a Latino man named Raul Mora so badly that he died after he was taken off of life support by his family. But for the first time in Syracuse, police officers were indicted by a grand jury. I'm also told that there were about 6 officers who were repeatedly involved in police brutality allegations. The city did know about this, but apparently nothing was done. Then in 1991, Charles Anderson and activists from Citizens United formed the Task Force on Police Community Relations, which had representation across the community. Chief Sardino at the time referred to them as the marvelous misfits. They held public forums in each quadrant of the city and documented the voices and concerns and produced a report at the end of the year. The task force then proposed the formation of a CRB and presented a draft of strong enabling legislation that Councilor Charles Anderson brought forward in June 1992. Now, realize this was the same year that officers beat Rodney King in California. The same year that those officers were found not guilty on all counts. It was also the same time period that local Sun and football pro Johnny Gamage was killed by officers in Pittsburgh, not here. Also, there was a controversy about a brutal shackling procedure at the jail. So this was a time of heightened attention to law enforcement conduct. The first time a CRB legislation was passed was in January 1993, but it was vetoed by the mayor. The council then passed a revised, some say diluted, version of the law in April 1993, and it became law in May of 1993. Now, there's a couple of takeaways from what I'm going to describe to you. One is that the CRB goes in cycles. I would say every 15 to 18 years, there are recurring issues that happen in each cycle, some improvements, but also recurring issues, and a few crises. The articles go through some of that, the packet of articles, but let's look at the first administrator. Felicia Davis, who is now a city court judge, and the first board chair was Bernard Alex, now Bishop Alex, a Victory Temple Fellowship and a leader of the local chapter of NAN, the National Action Network. That board and administrator had very little support and faced a lot of politics. It was the first new city office in 50 years. There was no help from the city attorney, called the Corp Council or Corporation Council. The board and the administrator had to create everything from scratch: hearings, trainings. Felicia Davis and Bernard Alex also claim that there was active harassment against both of them, physical and verbal, by members of the police department. This is what they claim. There was also very strong opposition from the chief and the PBA, the union representing officers. I'm told that Chief Sardino's approach to the CRB was explicitly isolate it, kill it with neglect and indifference, it will wither and die off. The police stated, "You must compel us to appear by subpoena." And then the city said, "We won't enforce your subpoena power." So there was a catch-22. The CRB was quickly faced with a lawsuit by the PBA. They basically said that they could not be compelled to appear by a CRB because they claimed that cooperation with CRBs were a mandatory subject of collective bargaining. In other words, bargaining over terms and conditions of work between employee organization and their employer, the city. I will say that this issue has been completely mooted. In other words, it's irrelevant at this point because of a 2006 New York State Court of Appeals decision that says that it's not a mandatory subject of public bargaining when a city decides to involve an organization like a CRB in its discipline and consideration of complaints. But back then, a judge issued a temporary stay on the subpoena power pending negotiations, but the city never entered into negotiations about that topic. Another catch-22. Those early fights took their toll, and the CRB slowly became dormant. The block on the ability to subpoena officers made it seem difficult to resolve cases. There was no cooperation from the police. The Corporation Council didn't fight on behalf of the CRB. And at that time, the CRB didn't have its own attorney. By 2003, appointments were not made after board members' terms ended. The board just couldn't come up with a quorum. By 2006, they were no longer holding hearings. And CRB members reputedly were allowed to sign in for meetings and then leave. One board member actually resigned over that practice, which he thought was illegitimate. In 2010, they didn't even hold an official meeting for 7 months because there was no quorum to act and only one board member remained who was actually serving a term that had not yet expired. And the mayor's office started asking questions about whether the administrator was doing work. Now, there is something positive that happened during that time. Between 2002 and 2006, there was a series of, I don't want to call them secret, but I'll call them backdoor negotiations between then Police Chief Duval and after that Chief Thompson and the Corporation Council and the CRB leaders and a couple of advocates, and they tried to work out some of the core problems. In the second document in your packets, there's a document that says 2002 to 2006, 20 core issues. So you can look at what they discussed. And they were making progress. But police chiefs don't stay in office perpetually, and when Chief Gary Miguel came in, he put a stop to everything, and all the progress was lost. Then in around 2007, there were some efforts by local advocates, including myself, to interface and dialogue with the CRB and its administrator about what was going on, and we were rebuffed. There was also another problem, and this is an awkward thing to say, but it seemed at that time that the CRB was focusing exclusively on the Black community and was not open to the concerns and complaints of the LGBTQ community, people with disabilities, people whose first language were not English. And I actually spoke to the CRB and the administrator about adding a place on the form where people could say they fell into those categories, and it didn't happen. She refused or just didn't do it. It was very weird. So I spent 2 years researching the best practices and the best legislation around the country, and also analyzing the problems with the legislation we have here. The chart that's the first document in your packet is one of the results of that research. The crisis came in February 2011 when Felicia Davis was terminated by the mayor. Since I'm short on time, I don't want to go into the specifics, but there were allegations of misconduct, of doing legal work on the job, a subpoena that she did not respond to, a federal judge that demanded she go to Albany to say why. And Felicia had her own story that was very different and was about the lack of the support from the city. But the reality was Felicia was fired, and we're without an administrator. That's a recurring theme. At the same time, the United as One Law Enforcement Accountability Coalition had become active, and yes, I was one of the leaders. And this was after the death of 2 people in the jail whose names were Raoul Panett and Shanice Patterson. And United as One played a very active role in what came next. In 2011, Pam Hunter, now Assemblywoman Pam Hunter, she became a common councilor and was made head of the Public Safety Committee. She formed a legislative advisory committee with representatives of diverse communities and civil rights organizations and the police and the city, and actually the county legislature, because 2 county legislators from the city were also on the committee. In your packets is the press release announcing the Legislative Advisory Committee, or as I call it, the LAC, and also a list of the people that were on the LAC, and you can see the diversity represented. We worked for about 6 months, and then we came up with a series of recommended revisions to the enabling legislation. And I actually used a sort of a punch list of problems that I had produced from my research to guide my participation in the committee, and I've included that punch list in the packet as well. You probably ask, what were the most significant improvements to the law? And I've given you a document that I created for public consumption that lists the most important things, but what we did is we solved a lot of the problems. So, for instance, subpoena power. We made it so that anytime IA, Internal Affairs, now OOPS, gets a complaint, they share it with the CRB. And anytime the CRB gets a complaint, they share it with OOPS, and we do parallel investigations instead of waiting for IA to do their thing and then only doing an investigation once all the testimony is stale. Also, we made it so that IA turned over their complete investigative file, and that's what bypassed the subpoena issue. And this was Alan Rosenthal's idea. He is a very talented and senior civil rights attorney. And he said to us on the committee, if you get the full file, it includes the statement the officer is compelled by their supervisor to write about the incident that led to the complaint. So that incorporated the officer's version of events, and you can't look at a complaint of police misconduct without some information about what the officer felt, thought, and did in each moment. So that was an important key. We also added things to deal with the appointment problems, the quorum problems. We clarified the responsibilities and expectations of the administrator, which there really hadn't been. And we created a performance review mechanism for the administrator. I'm going to go on, but you've got my full list of what changed. And you've also got an article in the packet of historical articles that describe some of those changes as well, some of which was lifted from my document. So then the CRB goes through a resurrection cycle. Pam Hunter ensured that there was an appointment of a full new board. There were no carryovers. And Joey Lipari was hired as the new administrator in May of 2012. And he was an oversight professional with a lot of experience from Chicago. There was a much more effective and inclusive operation, and he was allowed to hire the first staff, an administrative assistant, who is now your legal secretary when you hire somebody. But Chief Fowler was appointed chief in 2010, and he was not at all cooperative. In October 2015, he stopped responding to the CRB in writing about whether or not he imposed discipline where the CRB took longer than 60 days to issue findings and recommendations. And let me say, 60 days is not enough. It needs to be changed. But in the LAC, it was a compromise. And in writing legislation, it is often the art of compromise. That one I regret. The CRB then, under Joey and the board, initiated legal action to require the chief to respond to CRB findings, and they won. It's the first litigation the CRB had ever done. And the city appealed, but the CRB won. And they also used legal methods to reaffirm their right to issue subpoenas, the right to obtain outside counsel, the right to obtain 911 records. It's part of Joey's legacy. But there were also major challenges from the mayor and the council. In 2015, the mayor vetoed a council vote to hire a part-time investigator and a forensic investigator that the CRB wanted to be able to consult to help the administrator with difficult investigations. And the mayor took a position that the city should not support a contract that would expand the role of making recs to the chief into one that assists complainants in their efforts at civil litigation. This is Mayor Minor's conception, not mine. The council also considered, but stepped back from changing the enabling legislation to prevent the CRB from being able to file lawsuits. But that, they stepped back. So then there's some intervening years with an interim administrator. Joey resigned in 2016, not under any controversy, but to take a fantastic oversight job in New York City. He's now doing oversight in Chicago. He's a friend of mine. The CRB hired David Chaplin as the next administrator. He was an attorney who had immediately previous, worked in the city attorney's office. And he saw the CRB through the conclusion of the litigation. However, David resigned only 7 months afterwards. And this was in large part because the board disagreed with an action that he had taken, supposedly without their approval. I can't tell you fact, I can tell you what I remember and what's on the record. 2 board members also resigned based on disagreements they had with the leadership of the board. The board chair, Mallory Livingston, also an attorney and a representative in the LGBTQ community, she stepped in as interim administrator. Raynette Relaford, our most previous administrator, was hired in mid-2017 and served 7 years until she was placed on administrative leave and then resigned in September 2024. However, during most of Raynette's tenure, Office operations resumed, and the CRB had a pretty well-functioning board. Peter McCarthy was one of the standout board chairs. He was engaged and effective, and he's somebody else besides me that is more than happy to be consulted on questions that you have about board operations, and I have his contact info. Relations with the police improved during Chief Kenton Buckner, and to some extent also with Chief Cecil, including meetings starting of a liaison committee we put into the legislation. Raynette was also able to access body cam footage and audio, but this created new issues for the administrator because of the technology, because the CRB didn't have direct access to that technology, and because it added time uploading everything, and there weren't enough computer resources in the office to do these uploads. Also, a CRB recommendation that SPD revise its use of force policy and training was rebuffed by Chief Fowler, and then it figured really prominently in a costly lawsuit about police conduct that the city lost. How am I doing on time?
Good, you got 5 minutes.
Okay. In 2019, a city councilor who was also a former SPD police chief, Steve Thompson, proposed an amendment to the legislation to prevent CRB findings and recommendations from being used in civil lawsuits. The public cried out. The CRB pushed back. It seemed to many of us as a diminution, is that correct? A reduction in the power and the impact of the CRB. Thompson withdrew the proposal after a tumultuous Public Safety Committee meeting. There's an article in your packet recalling that. One of Raynette's wins was after years of lobbying the city council, they finally agreed to add staff, and the CRB hired first a contracted investigator, and I know Virgil Hutchinson. He's a retired police detective and a very principled man. The CRB also got an attorney on retainer, which was essential, but they needed the council to approve the expenditure, and they finally were able to hire a data analyst and a community engagement specialist in 2022. But both of those people resigned in 2024 after a very turbulent period for the CRB and the office. In 2024, CRB operations were impeded by a very unfortunate office move by the city. And difficult questions were raised by Relaford, and there were also problems again with filling board vacancies. And I can talk about Raynette's concerns separately. At the same time, and I think some of Raynette's concerns were legitimate, in my opinion. At the same time, the council started to raise serious questions about Relaford's performance and then introduced two problematic proposals to amend the legislation in what I and other advocates felt was an ad hoc fashion. One measure that was narrowly passed by the city council and then vetoed by the mayor facing public outcry would have supplanted the board's role in hiring an administrator, stripped supervisory responsibilities from the administrator, and placed the CRB staff under the city clerk, who has no background in this field. So that was vetoed by the mayor. Then there was a second proposal to give the council new power to remove an administrator of the CRB in a really questionable and perhaps very unaccountable process and an unclear basis for removal. That was introduced and then withdrawn. Over time, one by one, Raynette's staff resigned, and the last one filed a complaint with personnel for the city alleging a hostile workplace. This was substantiated by personnel. Relaford was placed on administrative leave and then resigned. There's two letters from advocates in the back of your packets. One is a letter we sent November 24th to the council, requesting the formation of a new legislative advisory committee. There's also a post-standard article in the article packet. And it was received, but there was no official response, even after multiple conversations with Councilor Majuk. We also shared a list of recommended enhancements and amendment topics to the head of the Public Safety Committee, Councilor Majuk. And I provided a copy of that to you and already to Bryn. This comes from advocates. It's not just me. It's a coalition effort. And frankly, we believe that a LAC should be automatically convened every 15 to 16 years to review and update the law. It seems necessary based on this history. The last thing I want to say is that February 24th, we sent another letter when we learned that Councilor Majuk had formed a committee and started meetings of this committee with no public notice or transparency or even communication within city government. The committee was recently suspended, and frankly, the potential for the future LAC is unclear. So now we're at another beginning cycle, renewal. You are the beginning of that cycle. You're practically a new board. You have a lot to learn, but it's an opportunity to hire new staff and set clear priorities and expectations for their work. It's an opportunity for you to weigh in on enhancements to enabling legislation and to develop new working relationships with the SPD, City Council, and the executive branch that have been strained during Raynette's time. And whether or not a legislative advisory committee is formed, whether or not you decide to support that or not, this is your opportunity to perhaps shape the future of the legislation and the things in the legislation that need to be addressed to allow you and the administrator to be effective. So, last thing, thank you for this opportunity. And I have a list of training topics that if you're interested, I'd be happy to help you with and actually work with some of you on delivering training. I talked last time about Mike and I delivering a training and how do you look at a police encounter? What are the things you need to analyze and decide on? So if you're interested in those training topics, let me know. And I think I'm probably 3 to 4 minutes over, but that's not bad for me.
Right on time.
Right on time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions for Barry now? Also knowing that she's generously offered to, answer some other questions on the, as we go, but are there questions right now based on what we just heard that she can answer? We may need some time to digest that and then get back to you with more questions.
My 2 emails, please use both, and my cell number are on the first page of the packet of supplemental documents that I gave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's jump into committee reports, and I'm just going to go down the list as they are listed in the bylaws. Community outreach and public education. Is there an update? That's Ada and Olivier. Do you have any updates?
Not at all.
Okay, that's okay. Committee on Board Development and Training. I have Elise, Don, Josh, and Ada.
No, we haven't met yet.
Committee on Government Relations, Harry and Josh. Okay. Committee on Police Relations, Linda, Mike, Elise.
Because of the email from the chief to you, I just piggybacked on that and I included Elise and you on my email to him. I have a schedule of meetings starting with the police departments starting, I want to make sure, April 8th at 1:30 at the police department. They've actually given me a schedule each quarter, April, July, October. I've confirmed my attendance at the April 8th meeting at 1:30 at the police department. And from Chief Cecil's assistant, Claire McLean, she sent me that they would like to do training, have quarterlies with someone from training, internal affairs, the PBA along with the chief so we can cover just about any question or concern that comes up. So that's where I am. First meeting will be April 8th, 1:30 at the police department.
You said,
Can you forward that to me too, please?
Sure, I
Thank
can.
and to me, I haven't gotten it either.
Oh, yeah. So can you include everybody on that, police relations?
Yeah, I sent out, in fact, I included you in Bryn in my note to Joe, and I included you and Bryn in my response confirming my attendance on April 2nd.
Oh, we just need to add
So it's
Linda in
been,
there.
yeah, but the one with the dates on it, I'll send it out to everybody.
Thank you.
Yep, not a problem.
I think Linda and Elise are on your police relations committee.
Okay.
So, yeah, great. And remind me, the chief said that in the past, they've had quarterly meetings with that group, and then, was there a monthly meeting with a different group, or? I don't remember what he said, and I just wanted to just lay some groundwork so people know when the meetings will be.
Quarterly meetings with the board in SBD, we can schedule one of these when we are ready, that's in response. There was also a monthly meeting between myself, the CRB director, and our chief accountability officer, Mr. Rashid.
So when we have an administrator. maybe.
Yes, or a temporary administrator, or whatever you want to call it. The captain and lieutenant also have routine interactions with the CRB. That's the email from Chief Cecil on February 24th.
So the 8th meetings, does that include anyone other than you and the police, or are we to attend that?
No, each meeting is open to the police committee,
Okay.
so everybody's on it. So I'll send the email out to the whole board, so everybody has the dates that he's proposing, I'm sorry, that Claire is proposing. I just confirmed myself, that's all.
Committee on Operations, can you give us any general, for the consumption of everybody, updates?
Sure. Maya was very helpful in reviewing the resumes and basically pulling the ones out that fit the qualifications, because obviously we looked at the job descriptions. And then we met and we picked out 5 people that we wanted to interview. And we have 2 interviews tomorrow and hopefully 3 next week.
Is there anything you want to share in this group about decisions you've made with respect to next steps or goals for timelines, or are we leaving some of those issues for executive session?
Well, obviously, we're going to bring them back to the board for us to make recommendations as a whole on what we should do next.
Committee on Hearings, I think that's me and Mike, and we have not yet met. We are in a little bit of a stall while we hope to develop cases to get to hearings. All right.
I just want to say one thing.
Yeah.
Any committee that wants to meet after hours, just let me know. You can meet down at the CRB office and at One Plaza on the 5th floor. Just let me know, and then I'll just adjust my schedule to make sure that you have access to that.
They could meet during regular business hours,
That-
too?
that-
That's what you mean?
Absolutely.
Okay, okay.
But a lot of people work, so
Right.
just in case they need to have later hours.
Great. Thank you for that.
We can definitely accommodate that for you.
Oh, I realized we moved ahead before you were here. Do you want to give any update on the website?
Still waiting to hear back from the web administrator on what we need to have changed, because we need to update all the board members on that site. Again, getting access to all these different systems has been a nightmare, so slowly but surely, we're moving forward.
One update is that if it's not the best use of your time, AKA there's other things you could be doing, Brian Driscoll at the clerk's office said that he or Amanda at the clerk's office, if we just sent them things we wanted on the website, they would do it for us in this
Okay.
interim period before we have an administrator. So like
Okay.
meeting minutes, agendas, board member information.
Okay.
If that's one thing that we can take off of your plate, not having to do that, and we can just send it right to them, then I think that'd be great.
Oh, yeah, so do I.
Okay, good.
So do I.
Okay, then I can take over on that, just sending stuff to Brian, just sending the
Okay.
agenda.
And then also copy me on these.
Of course, yes,
That's it.
yes. And I think those are the only things we would need to have on there is the schedule. I know the schedule of meetings is already there for the year, and we just need to put minutes on there.
Put minutes
And
on
when
there.
when we get reports, they go on there,
Yeah,
and then board
any-
members.
Yep, any new board
So,
members need to go in
okay.
there, update
Do
it.
that. And, yeah, and that's right. Do you want to give an update on your position? Tell us a little bit about what you're doing, a little job description, or at least your own job description of what you are doing
Okay.
for us.
If we remember back, when was it? Probably late November, in executive session, we decided that because we had no one at the office, that people had no way of contacting anyone, and people were starting to feel that the CRB board had just fallen apart, that we wanted a person in there, public facing. So the board decided that to put me in that position. So I worked with HR. We were supposed to have 28 hours of office time. Because some rules with temporary hiring, they had to scale that back down to 20 hours. So it's 20 hours in the office. And the way we had left it was that I was going to be the one that pretty much just answered the phone, took in anyone who called in and needed to file a complaint, that would take that complaint and then put that complaint into the system. And basically that's what it all boiled down to. However, the problem is that there's so many other intricate parts that are starting to come together, like doing the invoicing, looking at the budget, looking at cases, making sure that the office is starting to come together. And unfortunately, that's outside of the pay grade or the description that the city has given me for the clerk type 2 position, which is just simply taking memos and answering the phone and typing up other information. So that's another reason why we really need to move in with a position as a temporary admin. If so chosen, then that would give me the opportunity to start reviewing cases, getting that information out to the board, and then making sure that the cases that we have pending that could go to a hearing or almost at the stage of a hearing, figuring out how to get them to that point, because as you know that you only have 18 months before the case becomes a moot case and the client loses that response on their complaint against the SPD. So, but that's basically where I'm at. And if you want to look at the job description, it's on the Syracuse.com website under Clerk 2, Typist 2. And it just gives a broad description of what the Clerk 2 typist is supposed to be. So.
Questions? Okay. Let's go to public comment.
Two action items that we didn't.
That's correct. My understanding was that both of those people were interested in more discussion and more, I'm happy to entertain it. I mean, I can't control whether there's a motion, if people want to make a motion on it. I was hearing from people that folks wanted a little more time to consider it. But if anyone would like to make a motion on one of those, we'll certainly consider it.
I think if discussion is needed, this seems like an appropriate time to have it. So, make a motion for the appointment of Don as the interim administrator of the period of discussion before we vote.
Would you be willing to accept that, Don?
I'm in the office, I might as well.
Okay. So the motion is for Don to be appointed as a temporary administrator. Do you want to make a time frame on that?
Sounds like we've got some candidates lined up, so I would say until permanent hire is made.
And the other thing about the nice thing about having someone who's in the office understanding what the process is, once the new administrator comes on board, it's a lot easier for me to run them through the gamut of how the whole process is supposed to run, what they need to have done, and then also help them bring the the rest of the staff on board. So, and so we're probably looking at anywhere between 4 to 5 months of being in that position. So, something for everyone to think about.
What do you base the 4 to 5 months on?
Well, by the time, from when I got hired with the city, the way the city runs and drags their feet,
Oh.
by the time we get the administrator on and.
Oh, that's your optimism about how soon we're going to get someone in that position. Okay.
Yeah, so
Okay.
maybe sooner, who
Okay.
knows? So,
All right. I second that motion. All in favor? All right. Any abstentions? Any nays? Okay. All right, the motion passes, and Don's our new temporary administrator. Maybe, yeah, thank you, Don. Mike, I'm trying to think of steps. If your police relations with Linda and Elise, maybe someone can get in touch with the police and just let them know we have a new temporary administrator, so that to the extent that they need that to check off, we have one, and we can, if that was a barrier, then it's no longer a barrier.
I'll send it out tomorrow morning.
Will they honor it as it, do you think they will honor it?
Our attorney says that we can appoint that person, and that will serve all purposes that we need. So but that's a great question for council, probably in an executive session. But yes, we could absolutely invite them to come to an executive session if you wanted that advice or other advice. Any other motions at this point?
Second action item was payment for the training tonight. Do we need to vote on that as a group?
I would entertain a motion for it. I understand that there is more discussion that some members have requested, but I would entertain a motion for it.
So I'll move that we pay Barry $250 for training tonight with a period of discussion before voting.
So now let me bring you up to date on what happened when I stepped over to City Hall today with the clerk's office. Any honorarium or training, a requisition has to be submitted before the training actually takes place. The aftermath is that we would have to then go to the council to get an approval for that expenditures. So we'd have to go to council, and council would either have to give us a thumbs up or a thumbs down on there. So from this point going forward, we always have to remember that anytime we're going to have training and there's going to be an expense with it, we have to get the requisition in prior to the training. I tried to get that done this afternoon, but they said we don't have the time to do it, and now it becomes an aftermath. And then, so now we have to go to, once the board approves it, we have to go to the council to get that ratified and paid.
So we can
Yep.
have a motion on it and then
I
set
can-
those wheels in motion.
Yep, and then I can get over to draft up a letter to get over to the council.
There's a motion. I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Let me know, Don, if, I'm happy to make calls too and to get that process going. And I'll just, yeah, so, recognizing the time that it's 10:07 and that I want to allow for some, yes.
Is there training next month?
There's a training next month that's done by our lawyers, so that's free. There's no cost to
Do
it.
we need to vote on that right now so we can get this out of the way? I know they don't get an honorarium, they get a
Right.
paycheck.
They get
Okay, I get that. But do we need to vote on that now so we can avoid any debate as to whether we should do this next month?
I do not think that it requires a vote, but we can discuss it more in executive session and come back. We have to come back after executive session, so if there's a need for that, we could do that then.
Okay.
But, just as the board development and training doesn't need a board vote to determine what trainings are required, I don't think it's required, but we can discuss it more. Any other issues right now before we go to public comment?
I want to say something. To make it clear, Barry, I really appreciate what you've given us. It was important. My statements against everything wasn't against you doing it. It was about trying to incorporate us before we get to this point. So I enjoyed what you said, And I'm not trying to be argumentative about things. I just was trying to make sure things were put in place with us all being a part of it, so we can understand thoroughly what it is. So it may not be an argument. I mean, it's not an argument. It's about making sure that we do it right.
All right, I'd welcome anyone from the public who'd like to make comment. Is there anyone here who would like to make a public comment? Yes, come on up, Jose. I'll just remind you, 5 minutes. Jose, former CRB board member, maybe current. He came here thinking he was a current board member. We're going to get some clarification from the chief, from the clerk.
Good evening, everyone. I'm here to just basically plea on behalf of the residents of City of Syracuse that you board members try to prioritize the hiring of a new administrator, just because that is essential for the ongoing business of the Citizens Review Board. And without that component, I don't think it runs as efficient as it should. So I am here kind of more or less to urge that position be filled on a sooner than later basis, because it has been quite a while since Raynette stepped down. And I feel like the CRB is a component that helps keep residents safe. And if it's not fully staffed and fully operational, it's detrimental to the city of Syracuse. So I would like to just, thank you for your time, but at the same time, just to see a little bit more action as it relates to getting that position filled, because from my experience sitting on that side of the table, it seemed like Raynette had a lot on her plate, just being the administrator, and maybe something needs to be put into question as to how much work one single person can actually do. It's kind of unfair to have one person expected to do a whole bunch of work if they don't have the proper support and the proper funding to get that job done. So I'm just here to, again, plead to see some action and to hopefully get the best candidate in that role. So thank you for your time, and good evening.
And would you spell your first and last name, just so I can put it in the minutes?
Yes, first name is Jose, Jose, last name Marrero, Marrero. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Any other public comment? If not, we will adjourn. Okay.
Few things. In the law revised in 2011, OPS was supposed to send you complaints that they got, and you send them complaints. So my question is, can you look into how many complaints OPS should have sent you, at least to get the number between September and when Don started in the office? Next, you talked about needing training. I would suggest you need two kinds of training. One, the internal processes of this board, but two, how do you analyze police policy and procedure and conduct of the police and conduct of residents of Syracuse? So I would urge you to think of those two categories of training. Maybe a third would be applicable law. I'm really glad that you're going to be doing a training in April about the Open Public Meetings Law. I think that's essential for this board so that everybody's on the same page. And given what happened with the committee that was convened by Councilor Majonk, that I feel, as do several others, that it was in violation of the Open Meetings Law, I think it's really important for you to be a model of compliance with that law. Next, will Don's temporary appointment to administrator affect the city's willingness or ability to pay him? Do you need, as clerk typist, do you need to explicitly vote on a simultaneous appointment so that one is not being seen as the city is supplanting the other? I'm glad you're starting to post things on the website. The website says the office is temporarily closed. If Don's presence means that somebody could come to the office, can you adjust that on the website? Also, the board members need to be corrected on the website. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no additional comments, I would entertain a motion to move to executive session.
I second it.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We will come back here to adjourn the meeting.
Last time.
government stuff.
Oh, okay.
The towns around here.
Networking or?
Yeah, mainly networking.
Where's everybody at?
We just need
Got some bathroom
six.
stuff. We just need 6.
Oh, no, I mean the audience.
Oh, you think they waited for us?
Well, Barry usually waits for us.
Last time they did, but. now let's
Oh,
wait
we
that-
got
One,
6.
two,
All right, I move to close the meeting.
I second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Aye.
Oh, that's fine, yeah. Excuse me.
You missed it, we adjourned. All right, we adjourned without you.